Not because it's perfectly worded, not because it sounds poetic or rehearsed, but because it comes from a place that feels honest, intentional, and deeply human. Most people walk through life guarded, not out of pride, but out of protection. They've been hurt, misunderstood, dismissed. So they build emotional walls not to keep people out, but to keep pain away. And in a world full of shallow conversation, transactional interaction, and people who ask to reply instead of understand, those walls stay up. Until someone just once asks something that feels different, a question that doesn't pry but invites, one that doesn't demand vulnerability but makes space for it. Think about it. When was the last time someone asked you something that made you stop, not to think of an answer, but to feel it? That pause is where the wall begins to crack, because emotional walls are made of pattern and protection, and when you disrupt the pattern with genuine curiosity, the protection loosens. A thoughtful question communicates more than words ever could. It says, I'm not here to fix you, I'm not rushing this, I'm not afraid of the real you, I want to know what's underneath. That kind of question might be simple on the surface, like, what was the hardest thing you've had to let go of? Or, what's something you wish people understood about you? It's not about being deep for the sake of being deep. It's about seeing someone beyond their mask. When people feel seen, truly seen, they don't need to be convinced to open up. They want to, because in that moment, their heart feels safe. And safety is what allows walls to lower, slowly, not all at once. The right question doesn't try to pull someone's story out of them. It invites them to share it when they're ready. And that invitation, when offered with presence and care, is often enough to reach the places no one else has. What melts emotional walls isn't force, it's empathy disguised as curiosity. It's asking not to gain information, but to offer connection. Most of us are just waiting for a reason to believe it's okay to let someone in, and sometimes all it takes is the right question. It doesn't begin in the polished version of ourselves we present to the world. It begins in the moments we let that version drop, even if just for a second, and reveal something raw, something real. Surface level is safe. It's where most conversations live. We talk about the weather, our schedules, the shows we're watching, the highlights of our lives. And while there's nothing wrong with those things, they often serve as emotional placeholders, comfortable zones we stay in, because it's easier than being exposed. But connection doesn't thrive in comfort zones. It lives just beyond them. There's a shift that happens when two people decide, consciously or not, to go deeper. Maybe one says, actually, I've been struggling lately, instead of smiling and saying they're fine. Maybe someone shares a memory that's not perfect or pretty, but it shaped who they are. These are the moments where walls lower and something real begins to build. Because connection isn't about agreeing on everything or having similar interests. It's about being brave enough to be seen and kind enough to see others. When we live on the surface, we give people facts. When we go beneath it, we give them ourselves. We've all had those moments when someone opened up and suddenly the energy between you shifted. It's not louder or more exciting, it's deeper. There's presence in the room. You're not just hearing them, you're feeling them. That only happens when we stop performing and start connecting. And the truth is, everyone is craving that kind of bond. But so few are willing to take the first step. We wait for the other person to drop their guard. We wait for a sign that it's safe. But real connection often begins with a risk. A small act of emotional courage that says, I'm not here to impress you, I'm here to connect with you. Surface level is predictable. It's the curated feed, the polite smile, the automatic answers. But underneath that is a version of each of us that's messy, beautiful, uncertain, and true. That version doesn't come out in conversations that stay on the surface. It emerges when we make space for silence, ask the harder questions, and listen without preparing our reply. We've been taught to ask questions to get answers, to gather facts, to fill silence, to keep the conversation moving. But the most meaningful questions don't come from a place of curiosity for the sake of knowledge. They come from the desire to understand someone more deeply. It's the energy behind the question that people feel. You can ask someone, "How was your day?" in a way that feels like routine. Or you can ask it in a way that makes them stop, breathe, and actually reflect because they sense you genuinely care about the answer. Intention shapes the emotional weight of every question. When you ask from a place of presence, people sense it. When you ask because you want to create closeness, people lean in. And when you ask with no agenda, just to know their heart, their story, their truth, that's when people feel safe enough to give it to you. That safety doesn't come from the words, it comes from the intention that carries them. You're not interrogating. You're not collecting details, you're holding space for someone to feel felt. Even the simplest questions, when asked with warmth, can create powerful shifts. What's on your mind right now? What's something you've been carrying alone? They may not sound complex, but when the intention is to connect instead of analyze, they become a doorway. On the other hand, someone can ask a deep, sounding question with a shallow motive. You can feel when someone's trying to appear interested versus when they are interested. That difference isn't about tone, volume, or timing. It's about intention. Do you want to understand me, or are you just trying to appear deep? Are you trying to connect, or are you just filling time? When the intention is pure, you don't need to craft perfect sentences. You don't need to be eloquent or overly insightful. People respond to energy. They know when your question isn't just about what they do, but who they are. They know when you're not just listening to reply, but to receive. The heart behind the question matters more than the question itself. It's the silent permission we give others when we choose to show up without the mask. When you open up even just a little, it tells the other person, "You're safe here. You don't have to perform. You don't have to pretend." Most people are walking around armored, guarded by past wounds, conditioned to believe that strength means silence and that being real is too risky. But the moment someone dares to go first, to share something honest, to expose a fear, a truth, or even just a doubt, that armor begins to soften. Vulnerability is disarming not because it's weakness, but because it's deeply human. We connect most in the places we try hardest to hide. And yet, those are often the very places that build bridges between us. When you admit that you've been hurt, that you don't have it all figured out, or that you're still healing from something that others can't see, you create space for someone else to breathe out. Let go of the pressure to be perfect. It's not about oversharing or seeking attention. It's about saying, "Here's something real about me, and I trust you enough to hold it." That trust is contagious. When someone feels that you're not judging, comparing, or waiting to correct them, they open up. Not because they have to, but because they want to. Vulnerability builds emotional safety. It's the invisible net that allows people to speak the truth they rarely say out loud. And when both people meet in that space, even a brief conversation can feel life-changing. Because in a world where most people are only half present, true presence combined with honesty feels like medicine. It's easy to hide behind intellect, humor, or deflection, but connection doesn't live there. Connection lives in the pauses, the shaky words, the eye contact that says, "I've been there too." You don't need to spill your life story to be vulnerable. Sometimes it's just saying, "That hurt more than I admitted," or "I've been feeling lonely lately." Those little truths create massive shifts in closeness, because when you open your heart, even just a crack, it gives someone else the courage to do the same. And often they've been waiting for someone to go first. It's one of the simplest yet most overlooked ways to make someone feel valued. When you're genuinely curious about a person, not just what they've done, but who they are, you're sending a quiet but powerful message. You matter enough for me to want to understand you. In a world that often feels transactional and rushed, being asked a thoughtful question can feel like a breath of fresh air. It signals presence. It tells someone you're not just waiting for your turn to speak. You're here with them, fully wanting to explore what makes them them. Curiosity isn't about being nosy or digging for drama. It's about paying attention. It's the art of noticing when someone's tone drops mid-sentence and gently asking, "What just came up for you there?" It's hearing someone mention something in passing and choosing to go deeper because you know that beneath that passing comment, there might be a piece of their story that's never been held with care before. When someone feels your curiosity, they feel your attention, and in a world full of half-listeners, that kind of attention feels rare, even sacred. You don't need all the right words, you just need to wonder about someone. Wonder why they believe what they believe. Wonder how they became who they are. Wonder what they feel but rarely say. That wondering creates a doorway, an opening into conversations that don't just skim the surface but move into depth, intimacy, and real connection. Most people aren't used to being asked meaningful questions. They're used to quick check-ins and surface-level small talk. But when someone leans in and says, "Tell me more about that," it's often the first time they realize someone actually wants to know them, not just interact with them. The beauty of curiosity is that it doesn't require anything except presence and genuine interest. You don't have to be clever. You just have to care enough to ask and quiet enough to listen. Because when your curiosity is rooted in compassion, not control, when it's coming from the heart, not the ego, it becomes a form of love. It becomes the gentle invitation that says, "You're worth knowing in all your layers, not just the parts you show the world." It's not about how many questions you ask or how long you've known them. It's about the energy you bring into the space between you. Emotional safety isn't created through words alone. It's built through presence, patience, and a kind of non-judge, mental listening that says you can be fully yourself here. Most people are carrying stories they've never shared, emotions they've never named, and wounds they've never trusted anyone with. Not because they don't want to share, but because they've never been in a room that felt safe enough to set them down. When someone feels safe, they stop performing. They stop editing themselves to be palatable. They speak slower, softer, less from the head and more from the heart. And in that shift, you begin to see the real version of them. Not the filtered one, not the one they show to survive, but the one that's quietly hoping to be seen without being analyzed or fixed. That version doesn't come out on demand. It comes out when the space feels calm, when the energy feels steady, and when the person across from them isn't rushing to respond or waiting to interrupt. Creating emotional safety isn't about being perfect. It's about being present. It's when you listen without the urge to correct, when you respond with warmth instead of advice, when you hold space for silence instead of trying to fill it. Safety is in the small moments, a soft nod when they hesitate, a gentle "take your time" when they struggle to find words, the absence of judgment in your eyes when they share something raw. These are the moments that tell someone it's okay to bring more of yourself here, and when someone feels that, they reveal things they didn't even know they were ready to say. They go deeper, they trust more, not because they were forced to, but because safety gave them permission. Most people don't need you to solve them. They need to know they can unravel a little in your presence and not be met with pressure or performance. They need to feel that you won't use their truth against them, won't shrink from their pain, and won't flinch when the real story comes out. They don't come from a list in your head or a script in your pocket. They come from being fully in the moment with someone, tuned into their energy, their pauses, their unspoken emotions. You don't need to sound clever or profound to ask a meaningful question. You just need to care enough to notice. When you're really present, you'll catch the flicker in their eyes when they mention a certain name, the tightness in their voice when they gloss over a memory, or the way their smile fades just a second too soon, and in that noticing, a question arises not from logic, but from connection. A felt question is one that meets someone where they are, not where you planned for them to be. It doesn't come from control or preparation, it comes from feeling with them. It's the difference between asking, "What do you do for fun?" and asking, "When's the last time you felt truly alive?" One sounds like a question you've asked 100 people. The other sounds like something that was born in that very moment because it was. That's the magic of a felt question. It's not manufactured. It's not forced. It lands deeper because it's shaped by what's real between you right now. You can't fake a question that comes from empathy. People can feel the difference between a line you've used before and a curiosity that emerged from the way they just looked away mid-sentence. Rehearsed questions aim to impress. Felt questions aim to understand. And that understanding is what makes someone open up in ways they normally wouldn't. Because they sense you're not trying to direct the conversation. You're letting it unfold naturally, led by truth, not agenda. Some of the most powerful questions you'll ever ask won't be pretty or polished. They might be clumsy. They might come out slower than you'd like, but if they come from a place of genuine emotion, they'll always land exactly where they're meant to. Because people don't need perfect words, they need real ones. And the questions that change relationships, the ones that break down walls and build trust, are the ones that come not from the mind but from the heart. Because connection isn't built on how well you speak, it's built on how fully you receive. Most people think communication is about the words we say, but the truth is, the most powerful moments in a conversation happen in silence. In the pause after someone says something vulnerable, in the way you hold eye contact instead of looking at your phone, in the warmth in your face when they say something that clearly means a lot to them. That's where people feel heard, not when you nod to signal agreement, but when they sense you're truly with them. Deep listening is rare. We live in a world that rushes, a world where people are half scrolling, half answering, half present. So when you give someone your full presence, you instantly stand out. You become a safe place. You become someone they want to share more with, not because you asked the perfect question, but because you stayed with their answer long enough for them to go deeper. Real listening doesn't mean waiting for your turn to talk. It means slowing down your mind enough to make room for theirs. When you listen deeply, you're not just catching facts. You're listening for emotion, for what's being said between the words. You notice the shift in their tone, the way their energy drops when a certain topic comes up, the things they don't say but clearly feel. And instead of rushing to relate, to fix, or to offer advice, you stay quiet just long enough for them to keep going. That's what most people need, not a solution, but space. Space to think out loud, space to feel without being corrected, space to be heard without being analyzed. Deep listening is a gift. It's an act of love. It tells someone your words matter enough to be held without interruption. You don't need to fill every silence or impress with clever responses. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let someone feel seen without needing to prove anything in return. Because when someone feels truly heard, they don't just connect with you, they begin to connect more deeply with themselves. They're not walking around hoping someone will fix them. They're hoping someone will understand them. Hoping someone will sit with their mess without trying to clean it up. Hoping someone will hear their pain without turning it into a project. In relationships, we often think that love is shown through answers, through advice, through giving solutions to every problem someone brings to us. But what people actually long for is presence, not performance, not perfection, just someone who says, I see you exactly as you are, and I'm not running away. There's a kind of healing that happens when someone holds your truth without trying to reshape it, when they resist the urge to offer a quick fix and instead stay with you in the discomfort. That's what being seen feels like. It's not about someone agreeing with everything you say. It's about them witnessing it fully, without trying to redirect, diminish, or polish your experience. And when someone does that, you feel a weight lift. Not because the problem is gone, but because now you're not carrying it alone. Being seen is powerful because it honors the person in front of you, rather than assuming you know what's best for them. Solving can sometimes come from love, but often it comes from discomfort with emotion. We want to remove the sadness, the fear, the anxiety, because we feel helpless around it. But the truth is, when someone's in pain, they don't always need a plan. They need to know their feelings make sense, that their reactions are human, that they're not too much, too dramatic, or too broken to be understood. When you choose to see someone instead of solve them, you show respect for their emotional process. You create room for their own wisdom to emerge, rather than forcing your version of clarity onto them. That kind of presence is rare, it's soft, it's non-invasive, it's the difference between saying, here's what you should do, and saying, I'm here with you no matter what. That kind of space lets people breathe again, because now they're not being managed, they're being met. Because before the words even leave your mouth, you've read the room. You've noticed their posture, the micro, shift in their tone, the subject they rushed past, the emotion they didn't name. Emotional intelligence is your ability to recognize what's happening inside you and them, and choose language that respects both. A question becomes powerful not just for what it asks, but for when and how it's asked. The same words can feel invasive or deeply caring depending on timing, tone, and trust. When you're attuned, your questions land like an invitation, not an examination. Emotionally intelligent questions are calibrated. They don't pry blindly, they meet people where their nervous system can actually go. Instead of, why did you stay in that relationship so long, which can trigger shame, you might say, what kept you hanging in there when part of you wanted to leave? One blames, the other honors complexity. That shift reveals empathy, perspective, taking, and restraint, core elements of emotional intelligence. You're not just curious about facts, you're curious about feelings, meaning, and lived experience. The framing matters. What's wrong can shut someone down, something changed in your voice. Want to talk about it, shows attunement. Adding permission softens the emotional landing. Is it okay if I ask you something a little personal? Respecting boundaries before crossing them builds trust. And if they say no, an emotionally intelligent response is totally fine, I'm here if that changes, which tells them safety matters more to you than disclosure. Follow through is part of the question's power. If you ask something deep but rush the answer, interrupt, judge, or pivot back to yourself, the question loses integrity. Listening, really holding what they give you, is the proof your intention was connection, not control. Reflecting back what you heard, it sounds like that was a lonely time for you, shows emotional accuracy and helps them feel seen without being solved. Powerful questions emerge from self-awareness too. You notice when you're asking to soothe your own anxiety versus to support them. You slow down, you regulate, you choose curiosity over certainty. And in that regulation, your presence becomes the container that lets their truth rise because the question you ask becomes the space they step into, And when that space is built with emotional intelligence, people trust it enough to bring more of themselves there, not just theirs, but yours too. Because asking a deeper question isn't only about what you want to know, it's about what they're ready to reveal and what you're prepared to hold. Real questions, the kind that reach beneath someone's surface, aren't just information seeking. They invite someone into vulnerability, into reflection, into emotional exposure. And when someone receives a question like that, a split-second evaluation happens inside them. Am I safe to go there? Am I ready to say this out loud? Will this person understand what I'm about to hand them? That moment is everything. Because if they sense you're rushing, judging, or unprepared, they'll retreat. But if they feel care, patience, and presence, they just might let you in. Deeper questions aren't about cleverness or boldness. They are about timing and emotional maturity. It's one thing to ask, why do you think you've struggled with trust? But what matters is how and when you ask it. Is the space safe? Have you earned that level of openness? Does your tone feel curious or clinical? The same question can feel either like an attack or an invitation depending on how emotionally grounded you are when you ask it. That's why deeper questions are a mirror. They not only reveal where someone is emotionally, they reflect where you are too. Sometimes people aren't ready to answer a deep question, and emotional maturity is recognizing that their resistance isn't rejection, it's self-protection. Readiness isn't something you can force. You can only meet someone with enough softness and patience that their walls might begin to lower on their own terms. When they don't, it's not your job to pry it open. Emotional readiness isn't a performance, it's a gradual process. And respecting someone's pace is part of what makes you trustworthy enough for them to eventually get there. The truth is, most people want to talk about the real stuff. They're just rarely given the space to do it with someone who knows how to hold it. So when you ask a deeper question, you're not just making conversation. You're testing the strength of the emotional container between you. Are they grounded enough to go there? Are you steady enough to stay with what comes out? Deeper questions don't just reveal information. They reveal capacity, safety, and the emotional temperature of the connection itself, not in the safe replies or polished stories, not in the version of yourself you think they'll like. It happens the moment you take a breath and decide to show something real, something unfiltered, something honest, something that carries weight. That moment is where connection lives. It doesn't require a grand confession or a dramatic reveal. Sometimes it's as simple as saying, "That actually hurt me more than I admitted." Or, "I still think about that night and wonder what it meant." These aren't lines, they're leaps, little acts of bravery that say, "I'm done pretending. I'd rather be real than be perfect." Going there takes courage because it means giving up control. It means risking misunderstanding, silence, or even rejection. And yet, without that risk, you stay stuck in surface-level closeness, comfortable, familiar, but emotionally flat. Deep connection asks for more. It asks for the moment you stop waiting for the right time to be seen, and instead decide to let yourself be seen anyway. And yes, it's terrifying, but it's also freeing, because in that moment, you stop managing someone's perception of you, and you let them connect with the version of you that's actually true. The courage to go there often means going first, saying the thing you're scared to say, asking the question that might make them pause. Holding the silence that feels just a bit too long. It's choosing presence over perfection. It's choosing honesty over harmony. It's choosing to be real even when you're not sure how it'll land. And the truth is, most people are waiting for someone to give them that permission. They want to go there too, they're just afraid of being the first one to jump. That's why the courage to go there doesn't just build connection, it unlocks it. It opens the door that both of you have been tiptoeing around, hoping the other would knock. It says, "This is what I really feel. This is what I've been holding. This is who I am beneath the practiced smile." And the moment that door opens, everything changes, because now you're not talking from the mask, you're speaking from the soul. And that's where real connection begins.